So, congratulations, you've written your first draft. Well done. It's a big achievement. You've probably spent hours, nay months, maybe even a year, slaving away on your work. You've drunk copious amounts of tea, had stupendous amounts of biscuits, jammy dodgers. Well, the work really is only about to begin. Hello and welcome to the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we are continuing our writing fantasy and imp's journey. This is part 4 and this one is all about rewriting, editing and proofreading. So, as I say, you've probably just finished your first draft. So what do you do with it now? Well, Parts 1, 2 and 3, we've already covered various things that should have led you up to this stage, such as why do you want to write, where to start, your inspiration and ideas, good how to write reference books, how to create your own fantasy world, what type of fantasy world is it, and the basic story structure, plus the themes in your story. And as I say, this one's all about rewriting because this kind of is where your novel will take shape. The great thing about doing a first draft is no one else need read it. So you can be vulnerable, you can just pour your heart out, you can make your mistakes, you don't have to be perfect. That comes later, that comes after all the rewrites. And that's the beauty of it. When I first started writing, I actually used to really want to get the first draft perfect and it used to paralyze me. And then I realized, do you know what? I don't have to do that. No one's going to be reading this. So it's all in the rewriting. But let's take a closer look at rewriting and what exactly is it. Now, for me, as I say, rewriting is where you really do shape your novel and your work. And what I tend to do is, because if you've been writing something on and off, or maybe full time for, a good 6 months maybe, then you're going to be fully immersed in it. And that's a good thing, because obviously if you're writing something, you want to be really in the zone and really know about what you're writing. But then when it comes to rewriting, that can be kind of detrimental to you because you may feel drained. You might, you'll have mixed emotions because you'll be, yay, I've finished the first draft, but then you feel like, wow, what a journey, because you'll have lived your characters' journeys for you, and obviously, hopefully, it's an emotional journey. So you're going to be drained. So my first tip would be, have a break. Be kind to yourself. Congratulations, you've finished your first draft, and that is a big achievement. Now, I would say have at least 2 days off, 3 days, maybe a week. I remember sort of taking 2 days 2 weeks, or maybe 3 weeks after I finished the first draft of my children's fantasy book, The Legends of Grimace Ironblood, because I was really involved with it, and I just needed to get away, and I felt I just wasn't going to rush into rewriting it. So I just kind of felt, 2-3 weeks, that was enough time to get a distance, because you want to be critical of your first draft. And and that's fine. You don't want anyone else to be critical of it because it's vulnerable. You've just poured your heart out and you've made mistakes in there. There'll be things that you read and you'll go, hang on, did I write that? That's terrible. But that doesn't matter. You need to make this the best book that you can. So what I would recommend is, when you come back, have fresh eyes. Think of it as though you've never read it before. Think of it as a reader would when they read it for the first time. And so when I do a rewrite, what I do is I will first of all look for an overall general feeling. Did I capture the essence and the flavour, the feel of what I was actually trying to do with my work? Did it flow properly? Did I capture exactly what I wanted? And if not, then this is the time to change it. Be critical. Because if you get the feeling right, the flavour of it, the tone of it right, then everything else kind of seems to fall into place after that. So once you've then gone through it all, ask all those questions. Does anything jar? Is anything out of place? Be tough on it. Make a list. I love lists. And then just go through it again and take your time. And you rewrite, take your time on this as well. It's just as important as when you do your first draft. Then, once you've done all the rewriting of just the feel of it, have another little break, maybe a day. And then what you want to do is you want to go back to it again, try to be as critical as you can. Doesn't matter. You're being critical of your own work. So, it's not like someone else is being critical of it. And then what you want to do is I then start on the characters. Did the characters fulfill what you saw in them? When you were writing them, did they flow as you wanted them to flow? Did they have their own unique voices? Are they different and unique from each other? Are the names, are they pronounceable? Because as you probably, if you've been watching any of our episodes, I'm not brilliant at pronouncing names. So when I was writing my book, The Legends of Grimace Ironblood, I decided that I would try to have names that weren't too outlandish. Because obviously you're writing fantasy, so you want your names to be slightly exotic. Things like that. Anything that jars with the characters. And the other thing you have to do is keep track of your characters. And this is very important. I would write a timeline. So go through and just concentrate on one character and write exactly where they are and write it out on a timeline, and then pick another character and write it on the same timeline but below, so you know where all the characters are. You can pinpoint them. So if character A is in the tavern for 3 chapters, probably getting drunk, and where's character B? Do they come into the tavern at any point? So if they're in the tavern, are they in a mountain, fighting a dragon? Keep an eye on that, because what you don't want is any inconsistencies of where they are in time and place in your story. And the other thing is, what are they wearing? Now that's sometimes overlooked, because obviously if a character puts down their hat and then they're in the next scene or the next chapter and they've kind of got their hat on again, it might not feel important, but sometimes that can break the illusion that you're trying to create, because obviously the fourth wall in acting, where you kind of, you don't want to break that illusion that you've set up for your reader. And so little details like that can really kind of jar with the reader, because they'll say, well, hang on though, he didn't pick his hat up, or that sword was destroyed, and then next time he's using his sword again. That doesn't make sense. So you've got to look for any inconsistencies and iron them out with the character. And then have another day's break, because you don't want to overload. You don't want to get too, bogged down with too much detail all at once. So I'd say have another day's break. Then you want to look at my actual fantasy world and the landscape of it and how I built the fantasy world. So obviously, being fantasy, magic is key. Magic's very, very important. So you want to look at all the inconsistencies or consistencies in the way that you've introduced magic. Is it clear? Is magic maybe too dominant? Is it too easy for your heroes because they can just use magic whenever? You've got to plan how your magic is going to be used and do it in a consistent and precise way. Sometimes, this can be one of the trickiest things. I've got a character that can use magic. It's Grimace Ironblood, who's one of the main characters. And I'm working out exactly how he can use magic and why he can use magic. And then when he uses magic for the first time, people see him do that, but they're amazed. And I say that it's quite a rare occurrence. So things like that. So now, okay, the audience know that magic is quite rare. And then if another character uses it, they've got to ask themselves, well, how can they use magic as well? So you've got to be clear about how your magic is being used. Likewise, you've got to look at all the other world building elements, such as if you've created a political system or a kingship. If there's kings and queens, are they consistent in the way that they rule? You've got to look at religious aspects. If you create a religion, have you thought out all of those consistencies? You can then start going into further detail. You've got to ask yourself, what would the reader be asking of your world? So those are very important indeed. So if there are any laws that are, broken, you've got to fix them. And obviously, this is what the first draft is all about. Then, after that, once I've done that, again, I'd have another little break, because again, you don't want to overload yourself. You've just got to generally go through to see if everything else makes sense. As a reader, you've got to try to be as objective as possible, because there's no point in trying to flatter yourself And if you think that something is really brilliantly written, it might not be. And vice versa, if you think, oh, that doesn't really work, it might be. So you have to think, does it really make sense? Does everything make sense? You've got to iron out any inconsistencies and be critical. That was exactly what I had to be. When I first wrote it, I was dead set on the way that the chapters unfolded and the way, the order of the main characters were introduced. And then on my third or fourth draft, I went, oh no, actually, hang on, this character needs to start the book. I just felt it was more of an impact beginning. But it took me 3 or 4 drafts to actually make that decision. And that was the final tip I'd pretty much say is always do not be afraid of changing anything. At this stage, if you change anything, it's fine because no one else is reading it. Don't be afraid of that change. After all, when you see an artist paint, they will sketch first of all, and they'll be rubbing things out, changing things. They'll do sketches. This is what your first draft is all about, and editing and proofreading and rewriting is all about. So I would say rewrite this as many times as you possibly can because you want this to be the best that you can make it, and rewriting is your chance to do that. And also, what I would say is proofread it. Do that separately. Don't try to do all of it at the same time because your brain will overload and it will hurt. Believe me, I've tried doing that. So then, once you feel like you've got the story, and it might take you 10 drafts, 11 drafts, however many, do a proofread for spellings and punctuation and grammar. Now, there are various online resources. There's also books that you can buy. It's key because obviously if somebody is reading this, they expect all the punctuations and the spelling and the grammar to be correct. Be consistent with those because there are various ways that you can do it. Be consistent. Read other novels that you like and see how they do their grammar. It's always a good tip to look at that. And then you can just be consistent with that because if there's nothing worse if you read something and there's poorly spelt words or the grammars, that again can break the illusion. So that's my advice there for you when you rewrite your book. So congratulations. And as I say, there are parts 1, 2 and 3 available for you to watch. And if you haven't started to write anything, I encourage you to do so. Writing is a great thing to do. It's very creative and it's a whole lot of fun. Until next time, keep it unreal.